Give one. There you go. Start.
Hello everyone, welcome. Whether it's morning, afternoon or evening in your part of the world, we're thrilled to have you with us.
Just need to get participants in.
Welcome to the Solar Release webinar. My name is Julie Brown and I'm the Head of Training and Development for GWO and Secretary to the Solar Committee. I'll be your host for today's session. On behalf of GWO and our partners at the Global Solar Council, I want to thank you for joining us today. This is a landmark moment as we officially launch the training standards that will support the safe, sustainable growth of the global solar workforce. Today, we're bringing together experts from across the renewable sector to share their perspectives on how these new standards will help employers, training providers, and workers adapt to this challenge. It's my pleasure to introduce our prominent panel of speakers. We have Jakob Lau Holst, CEO of GWO, who will help share the story of how global standards will reshape the industry. Sonia Dunlop, CEO of the Global Solar Council and Vice Chair of the new Solar Training Committee, who will highlight the solar sector's workforce challenge. We have Thomas Redmond, Training Project Manager at GWO, who will walk us through the new solar standards. And finally, Dennis Elsberg, Vice President of HSQE at RES Group and GWO Board Member and Chair of the new Solar Training Committee. Dennis will share the committee's role and employers' perspective on the workforce challenges across the solar. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Jakob Lau Holst, CEO of GWO.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for everyone joining this webinar. I think we still have a couple of participants coming in, but I trust that you will be able to hook on to the storyline here. So my name is Jakob Lau Holst. I'm CEO of Global Wind Organization, or GWO. Our members are here on the screen, and I'm here to share a little bit about who we are to all of those who are not familiar with GWO. GWO is an industry-led organization that delivers training standards for the global wind industry. Our members are all of them duty holders and large employers where they have global reach, and you can see them here on the screen. The initial impetus or reason for starting GWO and for collaborating on creating safety training standards was basically a very strong desire as duty holders to keep the workforce safe and competent to work without major incidents. And it also was accompanied by a strong and shared need to facilitate workforce mobility across sites and assets, and to recognize and use training all along the value chain. So if you are the duty holder installing a site, building a site as a utility, you employ a wind turbine manufacturer who employs sub-suppliers, and all of those people on site need to have the same kind of safety competences so that you are able to support processes and work in a safe way and efficient way. And so this is a role that GWO has been trying to achieve and trying to help with in the past 12 years, closer to 14 years actually. And it has proven a successful recipe for wind. And I will show you in a second how successful. Some of our members, you can see here, half of them roughly, are also utilities who have been active in solar and installing utility solar scale projects. And they came to us in around 2020, 2021 and said, hey, we can see we have a super nice system that works in the wind industry, and we'd really like to solve some of the same issues in solar. Can you help? And a little bit of an existential crisis when they came to us with this, which we have mitigated, you will, by partnering up with Global Solar Council, who is the organization representing the solar industry, and also has the deep knowledge of how that industry works and the context of that. And what we have is a strong model for standardizing safety training and for the delivery in a quality assured way. So if I can have the next slide, please. And these two figures shows you how many course participants are actively participating in GWO training across the global workforce in wind. So with a small dip in 22, but on the entry level framework, so those are people who have taken a full suite of training. But if you look at people who are just doing the basic safety training, we are approaching more than 200,000 participants or workers in the workforce, and that equates to roughly 2/3 of the entire workforce in wind outside of China. Next. And today, the training and the various modules that we have developed in wind alongside and in collaboration with our members is delivered under our quality assurance at more than 650 training centers, more than 55 countries and territories, and to those more than 200,000 wind technicians. So that's the kind of machine and engine that we're trying to offer to the solar industry, and we are very confident with the project that we have done and a pilot that we have completed with Global Solar Council and with lots of companies that have helped us build this, that most of these training centers will be able to deliver training locally to you in a certified way. And we'll get much more into the details on that further on when Thomas talks about what the content is. But for now, I just want to say we hope to be of service for the solar industry, and that we can have some synergies. And with that, maybe I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sonia Dunlop, and just start thanking you and your team for embracing this collaboration with enthusiasm as you have. And it's one of those things that makes me more confident that we will actually achieve something good here, that together we are stronger. So over to you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Jakob, and for the fantastic introduction to both Global Solar Council and to the Global Solar Training Standards Initiative. So very pleased to be here, everyone. My name is Sonia Dunlop. I am the CEO of the Global Solar Council. We are the World Solar PV Industry Association, increasingly also representing battery storage, of course. And on the next slide, you will see some of our existing members. So we have both national and regional industry associations from all over the world. We represent 97% of the global solar market, which this year is estimated to be about 700 gigawatts in size, both small scale and large scale. And then we also have company members, of course, company members from across the entire solar PV supply chain, upstream and downstream project developers, engineering, procurement and construction companies, as well as manufacturers and other service providers. And we're really keen to bring this entire network of members to the Global Solar Training Standards project. On the next slide, you'll also see some of the members of our board. So as you can see, we have a very global governance structure. So everything we do is supervised by both our management board and our strategy board, which includes representatives from all the major markets around the world, both in terms of national and regional industry associations, and also all the leading companies, the manufacturers, and a number of developers and EPCs from around the world. So a few words on the next slide in terms of what we really are hoping to do here with this new initiative. And we're really keen to ensure that this is a truly global initiative, and we bring our global network of members to the table here in order to make sure that this is implemented in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, North America, Europe, the Middle East, the Middle East and North Africa region. We're really keen to bring our global membership to this and make sure that this is truly a global solar training standard that applies to a utility scale project in Zambia or Chile or the Philippines or wherever it might be. So on the next slide, you can see a few more details as to why we as the Global Solar Council, as the Global Solar PV Industry Association, as an independent not-for-profit, have made the area of skills and training such a priority. So we know that there are just over 7 million people working in solar PV around the world. Of course, that's across utility scale, commercial rooftop, residential rooftop. Not all of them are relevant to this particular training standard that we're launching today. But we also know that we have a rapidly growing deployment, that we need and that we therefore need a rapidly growing workforce in order to meet that deployment. And we are forecasting that by about 2029, we should be installing about 1 terawatt in total around the world. And therefore, we need to really be scaling up the number of people available, technicians available, in order to implement those projects. But we also need to protect the reputation of the industry. And that's both in terms of the quality of utility scale projects, but also prevent any reputational risks and ensure that solar has a real social license to operate. And of course, we want to ensure a just transition. So those are some of the underlying principles that led us as the Global Solar Council to embark on this new project with the GWO and all the expertise they bring in terms of renewables training standards. On the next slide, you can see a bit more in terms of the specific drivers for why we wanted to do the Global Solar Training Standards project. And I'm so delighted to be at the stage today where we're really launching the first training standard. So first is that we do know that there is anecdotal evidence, and some of you on the line may have evidence of this internally within your own companies as well, of a number of health and safety incidents, and indeed an uptick in those health and safety incidents as deployment has gone up around the world. That's coming from our asset owners, from our developers, from our engineering, procurement and construction companies. And there is evidence that this is comparatively high to other similar technologies such as wind or indeed other technologies such as oil and gas. We know that a number of inverter manufacturers, sorry, just to go back to the previous slide, as well as EPC companies are already duplicating each other in terms of the in-house training that they have to provide. And there is potential to really reduce costs in terms of centralizing this in an independent umbrella body that everyone can use, and in global level standards that everyone can use. And there are issues, of course, that some asset owners and indeed some insurers are experiencing in terms of the quality of build and the performance of some utility scale assets. So all of that came together to us kicking off this project with GWO, and really delighted that today we are able to really unveil the first iteration of the training standards. And we really need you as an industry to help us make sure this is fully implemented in the utility scale solar industry all over the world, in every corner of the world, through the training centers, through the EPCs, asset owners and developers. And we really call on you to get involved and help make this a success. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Julie.
Thank you, Sonia, for your insights. We're now pleased to welcome Thomas, who will be presenting the solar standards themselves. Thomas, over to you.
You are muted, Thomas.
Yes, sorry. So, yes, I hope you can hear me now. Thank you very much, Julie. So my little part of our webinar today is going to be presenting some information about the standards that we have developed. And so you can see here the two documents which we released as new training standards this summer. We have the Solar Safety Training Standard and we have the Solar Technical Training Standard. Each of these documents contains details of the training modules, which are now available to the network of training providers. We have 3 modules within the Solar Safety Training Standard, and we have 2 modules within the Solar Technical Training Standard. You can see the modules there: Safe Solar Work, a first aid and a first aid awareness. That is 2 options, 2 different ways you can approach your safety, your first aid training. And then within the technical standard, we have an installation training and we have an electrical training. So let's move to the next slide. To design a global training standard is not easy. We have been doing it for the wind industry for more than a decade, and what that requires is expertise from lots of stakeholders, companies from all over the world with different regulatory regimes, different types of workforce profiles in their locality. It takes input from training providers and from technical experts. And so for this project, we drew in expertise through our steering committee and our working group from or existing GWO member companies who are involved in solar, from GSC member companies who are deeply embedded in the solar sector, and from some of our major training providers, international providers who are, in many cases, already doing training for solar projects in different parts of the world. So we drew in the right people and the expertise that we needed to do this work. And so yeah, it wasn't easy. It was exciting work, and that has allowed us to develop these standards. You can see some of the logos of the kind of participating companies here. Let's move forward. As part of our process, when we develop a training standard, we seek feedback from the industry and from what we call our public hearing process. So we did this a number of months ago. We published these standards in their draft form before they were finalized, seeking feedback from the sector globally. We were really excited to see more than 100 downloads of these quite substantial documents right across the globe. You can see some of the statistics there for different regions that had a really high interest. As an example, you can see, you know, the United States and the UK with lots of downloads, and that process helped us to refine the content of these standards and get them ready for their final version, which, as I say, were released in the summer. As part of that process, we sought specific, you know, kind of feedback about technical content and also the appetite to actually use these standards. Let's go to the next slide. You can see here the high level kind of ratings and feedback we got from that process. We were really pleased to see this. So you can see 4s, 3.9 out of 5, 4.1, 5, and 5. You can see the modules, first aid awareness, solar safe working, installation, and electrical, getting really strong positive feedback, as well as a high level of engagement, which for us is a great thing. That tells us that the work that we've done in the kind of technical design is going in the right direction. So that public hearing allowed us to kind of get these standards ready for publication. We can move forward to the next slide. And the focus area for this training, you can see it laid on a typical solar kind of project. So to build a solar array, a solar energy generating farm, there is lots of work involved, and we've focused in on the areas you can see here highlighted as 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9. And so the workforce that we're targeting are the workforce that are needed to build and maintain, operate these projects. So that is a workforce involved in bringing material to site, getting panels installed, getting equipment mounted, getting it connected together, getting it commissioned, and then once it's commissioned and operating, troubleshooting it, maintaining it, repairing it, and keeping the power going. So let's move to the next slide. The modules that we have designed are designed as modular for a reason. Different employers in different regions will have a need for different types of workforce, whether they're in the construction phase or whether in the operating and maintaining phase. It will be different for every project. And so we have identified 3 key roles, which are generic roles. And as I say, they will be different in different regions and companies. The first role is the kind of basic labor and support role. So these are the workforce that are probably local, probably joining a project when it is in the build phase. They're providing labor, material handling, mounting components, involved in lots of physical work on site, which can be hazardous and also technically challenging to a limited degree. Getting all that material installed, ready for it to be then handed over to maybe a more skilled team who will be involved in the next phase of work. Role 2, you can see, is described as like the mounters and installers. So these section of the workforce are doing kind of more skilled mechanical and possibly some electrical work, where they're starting to mount and fix together components, cabling, and connectors to bring a solar PV to where it's ready to be commissioned. And then role 3 is the more technical, more specifically electrical roles, where we would have the workforce involved in the commissioning of the system. And then, of course, when we have power being generated, operating, maintaining, and when things go wrong, troubleshooting and repairing. And this is another profile that we've identified. So these three roles are relevant because it kind of informs us about our target audience for the training modules. Let's go to the next slide. Here we can see those roles mapped against the modules. This is not set in stone. It will be different in different regions, as we say. It will be up to employers and duty holders to select the training that is most appropriate for their workforce. But this is how we have targeted the modules. So our Safe Solar Working module is targeted at the whole workforce. And that is the basics to bring people on site and make them safe to take care of themselves and support those around them in their day-to-day work right across the lifespan of a project. You can see the first aid is kind of in two different formats. You've got a full first aid training, which is a day of training, or you've got a half-day first aid awareness option as well. And so that's an option for workforce which are maybe involved in construction. We have designated first aiders who may be doing the full first aid training, and then we have maybe another large section of the workforce who are doing an awareness training so that they can support and bring the first aiders to scene if we had an incident. It might be different in a operational context where we have smaller teams working maybe in smaller groups, and we maybe decide to train everybody and make everybody a qualified first aider under the first aid module. So it gives us two options depending on the context. And the two technical modules you can see, installation and electrical. The installation module, most suitable for those working in mounting and installing and certainly commissioning, operating, maintaining and troubleshooting. And then an electrical module really specifically targeting that electrical profile, that more skilled profile that are involved in the commissioning, operations and maintenance and troubleshooting. So designed as modular to fit different markets and different types of worker profiles. Let's go to the next slide, please. The growing sector, solar PV sector, has been kind of elaborated on already, and the numbers are rather staggering. There was a number of 7 million workers in the sector kind of mentioned before. Well, we're targeting at the moment those workers that we know are going to be involved in construction and involved in operating and maintaining solar PV projects globally. That's something like 10% of that workforce. So something in the range of 700,000, possibly as many as 1 million workers that we need to train and bring in. And those are going to be coming in as new workers, transitioning in from other sectors. And our training is focused on safety of those workers and also quality of their work so that they're building assets that produce and do so safely and do so effectively. So bringing that workforce in is going to be really challenging, and having a global standard that supports a workforce moving project to project and in different regions, we think is the right solution. And it's worked in wind. We hope it is going to be just as successful for solar. Let's go to the next slide. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on our modules because we do have a more technical implementation webinar, and that's scheduled next month in October. We'll talk more about that later. So just to give you an idea of what we have within our modules. So we're looking first here at the Safe Solar Work module. This was the module targeted at the whole workforce. So this is a 1-day duration training. You can see the specific time, 7 hours and 40 minutes. So a single day of training, really focused on practical skills, a 2-year training. So this is something that you would maintain and revalidate over time. It's for all the workforce, and you can see the focus is on safety, fire prevention and awareness, manual handling, a little bit of work at heights, hand tools, housekeeping, all of those basics to make sure that we have a safe work site for the workforce. As I say, the detail of this module is something that we'll talk about in a later webinar, but this is our Safe Solar Work module. Let's go to our next slide, please. Here you can see the content of our first aid training module. So within the safety training standard, we have two options, as I say, for first aid. We have a full 1-day first aid, the specific 7-hour duration, and we have a first aid awareness half-a-day training. So depending on the needs of your particular workforce for your particular project, you will pick the one that is the best match for that particular set of workers. Again, a very practical training, more than 70% practical. A training that you would refresh and revalidate periodically every couple of years, focused on life-saving first aid, and for those workers that are doing the full first aid training, getting into more scenario-based training and taking care of a casualty in an unfortunate kind of medical emergency situation. And for those workers that just need the awareness, just focusing on that really core life-saving first aid and getting others on scene to support somebody who needs it. As I say, it's up to individual employers to select the most appropriate option for them, depending on the project and the workforce. Let's go to the next slide. Now we're moving on to some of the content in the technical standards. So our technical training standard has two modules. The installation module, you can see detailed here. This is our kind of longest duration of our current modules. So 12 hours, 15 minutes. So really that's a day and a half of training. And this is focused on installation work. I can see, sorry, a typo here. It mentions first aid. You can ignore that line about first aid, but this is focused on the installation work for the solar PV array. So installing all of the mechanical components onto the system and installing the panels, handling and moving equipment. So the target audience for this are a large portion of the workforce that are involved in installation, mounting, some commissioning work, and of course they would also be involved in operating and maintaining, you know, if we have equipment damaged. So again, a very practical training, very hands-on, and this was a really exciting one to pilot. We did that over in Texas and got to see some really interesting training out there for the installers. So we'll move on to the last module. And finally, we have our electrical module. So this profile is certainly a more skilled profile involved in that electrical work. And so we have a single day of training. So this would be 8 hours duration. Again, very practical, focused on electrical safety, understanding all of the sensors and components that will be part of a solar PV system, understanding how those systems work and how you can connect those systems up effectively and safely and commission a system so that it functions effectively. The target audience for this training is certainly that electrical profile that are involved in the commissioning work, that are involved in the operations and maintenance work, that are involved in that much more kind of skilled and challenging troubleshooting work, you know, when things are going wrong, figuring out what was the root cause and trying to remediate and repair that. So this is our electrical module. And again, another exciting one to see this piloted in the UK and in the US as part of this project. Okay, let's just move to the next slide. So before I hand over to Dennis and Julie, I'll just say there's a lot of content in these standards. They're a couple of 100 pages each. We are going to have a technical implementation webinar later in the year. Julia will give you some dates in a bit. It's October 22nd. And so I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. And that's when we're going to get into a deep dive about these topics and really explore everything that you might want to know about equipment and facilities and all that good stuff that I love when I go to a training center. So I will save that for now, and I will just say thank you for your time and hand you over to Julie and to Dennis to have a discussion about the reality for the solar sector.
Thank you, Thomas, for the detailed overview. Now let's turn to the Solar Committee and gain Dennis's perspective from a leading employer in solar. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Julie.
So, Dennis, I have a few questions for you to put you on the spot. The first question. So, Dennis, Res Group, we know they operate in a multiple of countries. How do you think the standards will help the employers manage training needs across the different regions and regulatory environments?
Well, because we operate in multiple countries, this is exactly why the standards should exist. It's all about creating a baseline for us for the solar safety and technical competences. And as you saw from Sonia and Jakob, also recognized from GWO and the Global Solar Council. So a technician trained in Chile would see no difference in training than techs in Europe or Australia. And from an employer perspective, we could already see it at recruitment stage to validate that technician safety and technical competence without retraining from scratch. So at the same time, the standards are modular. So we, REST, as an employer, can layer on country-specific elements like national requirements for high and low voltage certification, and this will avoid duplication, ensure consistency, and support our global workforce mobility. So for companies like REST, and I perceive others out there, it means we can trust that the training is portable while still being locally compliant.
Thank you. So if you could give one piece of advice for employers and training providers looking at these new standards for the first time, what would it be?
Treat the standards as an investment, not as a compliance exercise. The most successful adopters out there will embed these into recruitment, onboarding, career progression, because the standards are modular. My advice is map them out directly into your workforce roles. For example, all new hires can take safe solar work, while technical staff layer on the installation electrical as required. The feedback I hear constantly from technicians, whether in the countries I just mentioned or elsewhere, is that they want training that's hands-on and relevant to solar, not generic. Employers who listen to that feedback and align training with real tasks will see the biggest impact: safer projects, reduced downtime, and customers who clearly see the competence of the workforce on their sites. These were also some of the elements you heard from Sonia in her presentation. So looking ahead, I guess I would say that you demonstrate the use and recognition of the standards, start embedding them internally, and also see how that affects your external collaborations if you are hiring subcontractors or the business model that Jakob was mentioning before.
Thank you, Dennis. Gives us a great foundation as we move into our next part of our discussion, and that's the Solar Committee itself. As the chair of the Solar Committee, you've had a unique vantage point shaping these standards. Can you share how the committee's work will reflect the real-world needs of the solar employers?
Well, the starting point has always been employer reality, but of course also focused on the benefit for the hands on the tools and the technicians. So the draft standards has been built on fidelity in training, something that the GWO has shown exceptional profession in. So scenarios are also included that can replicate what technicians actually face on site. For example, safe solar work requires participants to demonstrate manual handling, first aid, working at height in realistic conditions, while the technical modules covers tasks like crimping, tightening, maintenance, troubleshooting, all the things that Thomas just went through. And for me, it isn't just theory. I've just had the pleasure of visiting both solar farms in Chile and Australia, and technicians gave me exactly the same feedback. They want more practical, bespoke technical trainings designed for the solar industry. And I also had the chance to talk to customers. They echo this, saying that they value as well as being able to prove the competence of the workforce deployed on their sites. So by anchoring these standards in real tasks and validating the competence, we deliver both on technician needs, customer expectations, and then we take the solar industry to a next level.
Thank you. So you've just mentioned about technical competence. What's next for the Solar Committee? Are there any additional modules on the horizon?
Well, I just mentioned that we will have a focus on implementation. So the first wave of standards, as you saw from Thomas, covers the fundamentals, so safety training and basic technical trainings. So the immediate focus for the Solar Committee is, of course, implementation and adoption across the industry. And here I ask again, it's about the use of recognition. So the more we can get companies to take this on, the more we can spread it out. And then from there, we will take a more data-driven approach to look at the next modules that will come and leveraging, of course, all of your knowledge, the industry knowledge, and also looking at some of the pain points. So that might look at advanced modules like Sonia referenced in her slides, like battery energy storage. But again, it will be very data-driven. It will be based on both the knowledge, the needs, and the pain points that are coming back from the participants in the Solar Committee, and also the feedback from the people coming from this webinar.
Thank you for those valuable insights, Dennis. If you're interested in joining the GWO Solar Committee and you're an employer with over 1,000 workers, or your organisation has over 1,000 megawatt of installed solar capacity, we would love to hear from you. Please reach out to us directly at GWO or GSC to learn more about how to get involved. Before we wrap up today's session, we're pleased to announce that we'll be holding another webinar on the 22nd of October. I know Thomas has just mentioned it. This is going to be aimed at further supporting the GWO training providers with the implementation of the standards, and we'll be specifically focusing on how you can get them on scope. Additionally, we'd like to remind you about the upcoming forum taking place in Madrid on the 7th and 8th of October. This will be a fantastic opportunity to deep dive into the solar and explore the latest developments and how to get certified in this growing area. If you have any questions at all or need further support, please don't hesitate to contact us on info@globalwindsafety.org. I'd like to hand over to Sonia and Jakob for any final remarks. So Sonia, maybe you could start.
Thank you so much, Julian. Thank you, Dennis, as well, for bringing the perspective from an asset owner and IPP like yourselves. I just want to say that implementation is going to be absolutely key here. And we know of a number of asset owners who have already said that they are going to be requiring the solar training standard in all of their contracts with their, with their EPCs, with their various different service providers, and we need more and more asset owners to also be taking that step and doing this as we perfect and pilot and iterate the standard. And just to say that we're really open to feedback, both on the Global Solar Council and on the GWO side. We want this this training to be implementable, to be realistic, to be tailored to the different layers of the workforce, as Thomas laid out. So really keen to get your feedback in terms of implementation. And finally, I just want to say thank you to some of the members of the team, both on the GWO side and on the GSC side, who have worked so hard over the last few years to get to this point and to make this possible. Thanks in particular to Alyssa and Abdallah on the Global Solar Council side. And thank you also to those few really visionary companies who've really sort of shown the commitment and the vision from day one in order to make this happen. So specifically to Sonadix as an independent power producer and asset owner who's really led the way in terms of their support for this initiative. Thank you to Huawei as an inverter manufacturer with a very strong commitment to health and safety. And thank you also to ARMSA Academy, who are chairing the GSC's separate skills task force on wider skills issues, who've also really shown their commitment to making this a success and to this issue. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Jakob on the GWO side for a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you for stealing all of the thunder and the thanks going all around. I think this is really, I think what your remarks, I could have said all of them. And this is a testament that we're working towards the same goals, with the same ambitions, trying to make the workforce safe in renewables and in the energy transition. One of the things that I just want to reiterate that this is a call to action to large duty holders and employers to really get engaged, to participate in the training committee. If you have 1,000 megawatts in your pipeline or already installed, 1,000 technicians that you are responsible for as a duty holder, get in touch with us and let us get you in the training committee so we can help you get engaged, help you with your use and recognition, but also that you can give us the feedback so that we are sure that this product is fit for purpose and fit for the industry. And that's really how we work. We try to be at service to the energy transition. Julie, who has hosted us today, is our head of training development, and she will be your main contact point for the training committee. And I'm sure with Julie at the helm, we'll have a successful next year. As said, we are focusing on the use and recognition for the first year, and then as a secondary focus, we're focusing on getting the data so that we can prioritize work for the future. Okay, with that, thank you everyone, and thank you for your patience and participation. Hope to see you in Madrid, 7th and 8th October, or in online at the webinar on the 22nd of October with Thomas.
Thank you, Jakob. We've got some just a couple of final things before we finish. Just that on the thank you, Jakob, for your kind words. I'm glad it's being recorded, so I can record it and listen to it back. Finally, I want to thank all our speakers, obviously Jakob, Sonia, Thomas and Dennis, and all of you for joining us. The solar standards are now available through our GWO website, along with the frequently asked questions. And we really look forward to working with you all to make solar a safer, stronger and more sustainable workforce. Thank you and have a great day, everyone.